The Crusades, a series of epic clashes between various Latin Western and Saracen kingdoms for control of the Holy Land. At the heart of these conflicts, on both sides, was deeply held faith. For many modern people, with only a vague understanding of the medieval world, this was an era of barbarism. But the Crusades produced a situation that prompts the astute student of history to take a different perspective. The Crusades began in 1095, when at the Council of Clermont in France, Pope Urban II called on the Knights of the West to carry aid to their Christian brethren in the East. At the time, the Seljuk Turks had won a series of crushing victories over the Eastern Christian Byzantine Empire. Pope Urban argued that it was the duty of the West to carry aid to the East, and across Latin Christendom, knights responded, leaving families and estates for a journey that promised much danger and hardship. Historian Thomas Madden writes, "By defending the church, they defended all that was good and true in their world." In short, most noblemen who joined the crusade did so from a simple and sincere love of God. The First Crusade produced sweeping military victories. The Crusaders established 4 states in Syria, Palestine, and Mesopotamia, directly adjacent to some powerful Muslim territories. Saladin, one of the greatest Saracen leaders of the era, is recorded as expressing a feeling that captures the spirit of opposition to the Crusaders. "I have it in mind that when Allah has enabled me to conquer the rest of the coast, I shall divide up the lands, make my testament, take my leave, and set sail on this sea to their islands to pursue them there, until there no longer remain on the face of the earth any who deny Allah or die in the attempt." Clearly, strength of faith played a vital role in animating both sides. One would imagine that the Crusader states and their Muslim neighbors would exist in a state of constant war, unable to coexist on any level. However, this would be a profoundly incorrect assumption. The Crusader states, such as the Kingdom of Jerusalem, established in 1099, allowed their Muslim inhabitants to practice their faith and follow their own laws. Here is a primary source account describing the conditions of Muslims living in the Crusader Kingdom of Jerusalem. The term Ibn Jubayr is using here, Frank, refers to Western Crusaders. "We left Tibnim by a road running past farms where Muslims live who do very well under the Franks. May Allah preserve us from such a temptation. The Muslims own their own houses and rule themselves in their own way. This is the way the farms and big villages are organized in Frankish territory. Many Muslims are sorely tempted to settle here when they see the far from comfortable conditions in which their brethren live in the districts under Muslim rule. Unfortunately for the Muslims, they have always reason for complaint about the injustices of their chiefs in the lands governed by their co-religionists, whereas they can have nothing but praise for the conduct of the Franks, whose justice they can always rely on." The first Crusader king of Jerusalem was Baldwin I, crowned in 1100. He is described by Fulcher of Chartres as the right arm of his people, the terror and adversary of his enemies. And yet, Fulcher reports that on Baldwin's death in 1118, many Saracens wept. Baldwin protected the rights of Muslims living under his rule. Future kings of Jerusalem followed his example. The truth is that the conditions established in the Crusader states were to be found quite frequently in frontier societies of the medieval era. The Crusader states existed on the fringes of Christendom, directly bordering many Muslim territories. War was common between Christian and Muslim rulers, but as territory was conquered and reconquered, situations arose that required practical considerations. A Christian king might have many Muslims in his land, while a Muslim sultan might have substantial numbers of Christians living under his rule. A thriving trade economy was especially desirable. It's no surprise that King Baldwin I of Jerusalem, when he was at peace with his neighbor, Toghtekin, the Turkish emir of Damascus, established an agreement with him that permitted the free flow of merchants, both Christian and Muslim, between their territories. As a side effect, frontier societies tended to be places where differing groups developed the most understanding for one another. Christians and Muslims interacted frequently in the Crusader states. Ideas and knowledge were exchanged. The famous Arabian warrior and scholar Usama ibn Munkid describes certain Templar knights as his friends. These Templars, according to Usama, would ensure that he had a place where he could offer his daily prayers when he visited Jerusalem. None of this detracts from the reality of the conflict of the Crusades. Both sides believed that they had the right to rule the Holy Land, and this was an ultimately irreconcilable difference. But evidence shows that both sides could respect honor and bravery in the other. Primary sources from the Third Crusade find Muslims and Christians praising one another for courage. Richard the Lionheart and Saladin, who famously battled during the Third Crusade, respected each other as adversaries. William of Tyre describes the great Sultan Nur ad-Din as a just prince, valiant and wise, and according to the traditions of his people, a religious man. Meanwhile, Nur ad-Din thought highly of King Baldwin III of Jerusalem, although the two were enemies. It's a surprising fact to many that the Crusades were often the scene of understanding and mutual respect, as much as they were conflict. But history is generally far more nuanced than popular perceptions allow.